Welcome to Empowering Chats with Susan Burrell. This is where we have deep, intimate conversations about self-empowerment and future existence. I am an intuitive healer and a light leader who has been called to activate other light leaders. So I'm curious, are you one of them? So by listening, lean in and see if you are ready to be that eternal potential you've been called to be. Using your bravery, your talent, your tenacity, can you be innovative and adventurous in order to activate your light and lead from that place? This is where we learn how to love ourselves from the inside out and love the whole world over and over again. Enjoy the show.
Okay, everybody. So with the theme of 2025 for Empowering Chats as soul growth, I'm really excited to have this conversation with this woman. We've been trying to connect for months, but why I'm excited is because she's got some unique skills that I think are necessary not only for our individual soul growth, but for the planetary humanity soul growth. So I want to welcome Michelle Carpenter. Michelle, thank you for joining me.
Oh, my pleasure. And excuse me, thank you for having me, Susan. And as we learn, we get there when we get there, and we connect when we're meant to connect.
Exactly.
And I'm grateful. You're like my first podcast for 2025. So
Lou is right. So one thing I wanted to share with you, we didn't before we started recording, is I love your website, Michelle. And everybody, we're going to have her website stuff in the show notes. But what I loved about it is you're all about hearts, and your background right there is hearts. And the hearts on your website are mini labyrinths.
yes.
And
Yes.
I am a labyrinth person. Oh my goodness. If there's a labyrinth, I got to walk it.
Wow, that's
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah.
Gosh. Well, that's
So-
all my husband. And if I may share, my husband and I, this was like a 6-month project, which was a labor of absolute love, frustration, tears. It really just the labyrinth he designed, he is so, so clever. And, but I think people kind of just maybe sit back and go, oh, look at this. This is amazing. And I really feel it's important to go, this was hard work. And it was really just us going backwards and forwards. But it taught us so much about communication.
Yeah.
And I realized that so many of us, I think that you and I were chatting before you recorded, but you talked about being dyslexic, and I am too. And I realize that when I talk, I'm like, I can hear myself clearly. Like, I think I'm talking on point. And my husband will often go, you don't get context. I'm like, what are you talking about? Because he's very black and white, very logic. And every time we talk about business, he's very black and white strategy. And I always bring it back to the emotions. He's like, why do you always go there? I said, because everything's vibration. Everything's emotional.
Exactly.
Everything's a frequency.
Exactly.
So thank you for that. It's really just been a labor of love, like literally giving birth.
I bet. Yes, as any kind of business is. But you just explained to me why for like the last year or so, I think I'm very clear speaking. I'm very upfront, straight when I'm talking to individuals. But I find like working with my team on Empowering Chats and my husband and I think I've been very clear. This is what I want. This is how I want it. This is what I see. And then things are presented to me and I'm like, they didn't understand. What didn't you understand? But that's the attitude I have with my husband sometimes. But, come on, I was very clear. And evidently, I'm not. So that's like one of my personal intentions this year is to be as clear speaking and thinking and in my presentations as I can possibly be, because evidently it's not getting through to some people. So you've just answered that whole question for me.
Well, I love that. But, and I say a big but, and I know that we're not meant to say but I feel like a lot of us are so connecting in a different way. And it actually, our language is important. We know that because our thoughts are important, the way we say things. Yet when we really speak heart to heart, the language doesn't matter. And I get goosebumps as I share this with you, because it's like, does it really matter when we show up for each other in compassion, kindness, love, like the true authenticity of who we are? We just understand one another. So yes to what you said. At the same time, it's kind of like, does it really matter?
Right.
But I know that in the business world, this has been my learning, and I'm really stepping into that part of myself, because it really is, and this is what my husband's teaching me, is like, it's important how you articulate things. And I go, okay, but I can hear myself clearly because spirits speak through us. And that's part of my problem. I'm like, thank you. And he gets frustrated because I go, this is what we're going to do. And then like 3 or 4 weeks later, Spirit said, this is what we're going to do. He goes, what is it with your team? I said, because they speak in the now. Do you ever find that?
Yes. And it shifts rapidly right now, especially currently, that the timeline and time frames and multiple timelines, it's like hopping up and down on, and I just had a whole image of the different escalators, and you're just hopping from one to the other because that's necessary now. There's not a linear, okay, day 1, we're going to do this. And then day 2, it's not like that at all anymore, energetically.
Yeah. So true. And even like trying to figure out what day are we on? When we're in the presence of being present, and that's where, again, just to go back a little bit, that's been a big learning for me, is to really just, there's so many catchphrases or words out there. Embodiment is the one that comes to mind. At the same time, it's like, well, what are we embodying? We're so much of so much. And the learning is, if I may just share an example, but my husband and I come from South Africa, and I didn't realize until we moved to New Zealand, as much as I work with trauma, I work with grief, I'm specializing in the vibration of what we hold onto, if this makes any sense. So please stop me at any time. But I'm able to tune into a human's field, into the soul, into the body. So I work very multidimensionally. But coming back to us, we didn't realize that we had PTSD from living in South Africa and going through some really, really traumatic experiences. And I want to laugh at it because a friend said to me, and I'm a specialist in trauma, she's like, Mish, do you think you have PTSD? Like, we're like, what? Huh? What? Yeah, of course. And that's part of where I think our learning is to learn to not only navigate what our nervous system is showing us, but also learning to laugh through or laugh at the past experiences. And I never used to. I was very serious in my spiritual work. I was very serious. And obviously when I'm working with clients, it's very important that we hold space in the moment. But for my own journey, I can honestly say there's times where I go, shit, I really took life so seriously. Especially, I love how you mentioned Abraham Hicks earlier on. Abraham and Esther was so much a part of my learning in the beginning. Louise Hay, Wayne Dyer.
Yes.
But I used to drive my family mad because everything was about, what are you feeling? And then I'd have my Louise Hay book, like, I need to see, what is that about?
Oh, my son, to this day, I'll pull out my Louise Hay book and he's like, Mom. No, I'm good. I don't need to know what this is. I'm good.
Yeah, my husband didn't even want to go socializing with me anymore because he's like, Michelle, you want to ask everybody how they're feeling. What's this about? And when I realized is I was just taking it far too seriously, wanting to quick fix myself, my journey, and where I'd come from. And I was really just in that vibration of actually very heavy, because there's a lightness to who we are as spiritual beings.
Mm.
And I know that it's, again, just navigating where we're at. And that is my hope for humanity and individuals that I work with and in groups. Guys, let's look at how we can laugh at who we are. And I know with channeling the Council of Eight Angelic Beings of Light, I think that they actually, I know they laugh at us. And I had a woman call me out on my Facebook page, like, how can they even laugh at Donald Trump having a tan? And I was like, how can you not laugh at him having a tan? Like,
Exactly.
you know, and being orange. I mean, kudos to him for just owning it. But, you know, and she was like, Michelle, that is so judgmental. I don't know how to come back from that. Because I think it's quite funny that angels can laugh at us.
Yes.
Because we are funny as humans. I mean, we're so unique and individual.
Exactly. And having a sense of humor is the best way to get through traumatic events. Some of the best comedians come from trauma experiences.
Yeah.
So, Michelle, let's back up a bit, because I want to hear about your previous history that led you to become a channeler and a medium and a spiritual healer. You know, many of us that become empathic, or have always been, there is some sort of trauma thing that happened early on, and you've got an amazing story. So will you share that with us?
Thank you for asking, Susan. So in short, and I'll give snippets of it, because I didn't realize how traumatized I was until the age of 33, when my ex-husband had an affair. And then I went to go see a clairvoyant, and I was like, oh my God, I've got work to do. You know, you look back and you go, whoo, there's a lot. But I was born and raised for my first few years of my life in what used to be called Rhodesia, which is now Zimbabwe. My dad was a Rhodesian soldier. I was sexually abused at the age of 5, which, again, I didn't know was a thing. I had this real hatred towards men in my teenage years, which was also part of my mom's projection. My mom had always said to me, do not let a man dominate you. Well, that's all I ever did was, you know, allow the control. And I was seeking love. So my dad was, you know, kudos to my dad and my mom for being the people that they once were, because they've taught me so much about myself, and I've had to learn a lot of forgiveness. So I came from a dancing background. My dad was in and out of, I think he'd go to the army for like a month to 2 months, and then he'd come back. And my mom used to lock myself and my oldest brother up at night in her bedroom. You know, there was a lot of fear, a huge amount of fear in Zimbabwe. And then my parents literally fled Zimbabwe, they had to leave behind all their furniture, give away our dogs from what I can remember, and climb on a train. And I think my mom told us that we had like 9 boxes of stuff. That was it, from a full house to 9 boxes on a train. My dad had gone to South Africa, found a job, excuse me, and then we had joined him. In all of this, I remember being in a convoy in my dad driving. I remember being like 2 years old, and this was a memory that I'd had in therapy the once, where I can remember my dad. Convoy is I don't know if you know that, but there was like an army truck in the front and an army truck behind, and, you know, kind of driving and just, what's going to happen? And I remember watching my dad's knuckles being white.
Wow.
And these were just memories that came up. And you know, like I say, as I was working through my own trauma, I did not realize that being sexually abused was a traumatic event. I did not realize that what had happened to me was awful in many different ways. And when I'd started working through again at the age of 33, 34, it really, really impacted on my life. I used to have sore throats. I had bronchitis. I had bladder infections. I was just sickly, you know, on and off sickly, kidney infections. And at the age of 13, 14, because I come from a dancing background, I started with bulimia, which was very much about purging the self-hatred. The thing is, I can only laugh at myself because I got it wrong. My ballet teacher called me in one day, my mom in, and said, Michelle's puffing up. So I used to eat and eat and eat, but then I didn't vomit enough or use water. So I was bloating. And I can only laugh now because I'm like, how did I get that wrong? You know, I thought and the funny thing is, or not funny, is that I believe my mom had an inclination because I used to eat and get up straight afterwards and go to the bathroom. And these are the things that I had to forgive my mom, because I'm like, how did she not notice? How did she, being a mom myself? And you know, I know sometimes I don't notice. Sometimes as much as I'm intuitive and I'm, you know, knowing what frequency and vibration is about, and I look out because I know that I can pick up on it. But when it comes to our own family, sometimes I just have blinkers on, and maybe that's just my own protection. You know, so I want to share this with everyone because I don't have my perfection together, and I'm not a perfect mother. So this is part of just my journey and my learning, and I'm not a perfect wife. But then I lost my best friend at 16 and a half. And this is where I started to realize spirit were guiding me. And she died in hospice. And I remember sitting on a couch looking at my friend. She'd had a kidney transplant. And I remember looking at her parents coming out of a counseling session and going, wow, how is the counselor not crying? And I thought, wow. So fast forward to 33. This was part of my journey, going to see a clairvoyant. And he said to me, my mom runs a part of a division of hospice. I really think you need to go on this weekend retreat. And anyway, I managed to organize it because I had a baby girl. And my parents had decided they were gracious enough in looking after her. And on this weekend retreat, I was going to go work with my anger. I was going to go work with the fact that I was so angry at my ex-husband, and I want to take out the world and every man in it, believe you me. And the facilitator I got was perfect. I didn't like her, but again, spirit was guiding me because we had 3 facilitators. We had to go put our name on the board as to which one we liked or wanted to be with. And I ended up being with this one facilitator because I talk so much and I was so out of my body, so disassociated from the trauma. Anyway, she was perfectly aligned for me because when I came to know her, we had walked a very similar journey. Husband had an affair. She was also sexually abused. It was just incredible. But that specific weekend, Susan, and what I hadn't mentioned is I knocked over and killed a young girl at the age of 24, 25. I was a sales rep. And I looked down to put a straw in my cool drink, and she had run across the road and she had misjudged my car, and I didn't know what I'd hit, but I just had this huge impact. And I looked and I was in farm territory, so I didn't know if it was a horse, I didn't know if it was a dog, I didn't know if it was a cow. And 4 people had stopped and they'd found her body in what I as a South African call bush. It was quite long bush. And they said you'd knocked over and killed a woman, and I'd left a part of my body. I just completely left. And this weekend in hospice, the woman got me to feel how I felt about knocking over and killing that young girl.
Wow, Michelle, that's pretty brave. That's a lot of courage to face all that.
It was huge.
Any one of those things, it takes a lot of courage.
It was huge. And it was, I describe it as I cried so hard that it felt like my head had broken open, but it was my heart that was just feeling so much. And I couldn't comprehend. I was like, I've come here for my my soon-to-be ex-husband, and I've come here. And she just kept going, in the feelings, in the feelings, in the feelings. And that weekend, that night, I had to be put to bed, given medication. Everybody was trying to massage I just had a beautiful group of people that were just so nourishing and so kind. And this was a big part of my journey, that I didn't know how to be nourishing and kind because my mom wasn't nourishing and kind. She was kind in the way she fed us. She was kind in the way that she had raised us in the best of her abilities. But my mom had projected a lot of her pain and anger onto myself and my older brother.
Yes.
I was the kid that remembered a lot. He shut down. I remember the fighting. I remember, again, my parents were young. There was a lot of drinking. I came to realize my dad was a weekend alcoholic. My mom was a very angry drunk. So there were all these, I want to call them like packages or suitcases that were just in me, and in the dynamic of what the intergenerational trauma was about, because my mom's dad had had affairs. My dad had had affairs. He still sits on the fence with, I confronted him about 2 weeks ago. I'm like, well, Mom said, you had had 2 affairs. He's like, I didn't. Where did you get that information from? But that's their journey. I can't, because this is who I was. I was like, I want to know. As soon as I started this journey, I want to know. I want to know. And I would activate my parents, and I went with this forcefulness of, just tell me, because I want to heal. Now I want to heal. Now I'm on this my little rodeo.
Right.
And what I did was I just made them shut down, and I was angry, so angry. I've mentioned that a few times, but I was such a victim of my life, such a victim of, I was involved in so many dramas and so much blame and wanting to hurt everybody with my words, and yet I was hurting myself. And the interesting thing is that the patterns, the family dynamics of the patterns of the intergenerational trauma was that so many of the relationships I was involved in, the men had had affairs. They had loved and left me, So that just brought me to the space of going down a wormhole of drinking for 2 weeks and crying my eyes out and just like, how dare they? What's wrong with me? A lot of lack of self-worth. So this got me to beautifully start working in hospice. I then, from this weekend, went on a 14-week course where I was already going through my divorce. So it was all a lot of self-healing. And I cried, Susan. I cried and cried. And this was part of my self-loathing and being an empath. I didn't realize at the time that I was picking up on so much. So I would self-loathe. Every time I cried, I would self-loathe. I would cry. And I want to share a beautiful part of my journey with knocking over and killing this young girl, is that her mom had received or got my cell phone number off the accident report, and she phoned me to find out how I was doing.
Wow.
And her name was Mary. And I never, ever forget this because it just impacted on my heart so
I
deep.
have chills right now, Michelle. Just full body chills, just constant, just waves. Wow, that's incredible. So what was your journey from being a victim in your life? How did you move from victim to who you are now as a channeler, a medium, and a healer? Because that's a long period of time of victimization, and then having to, oh my gosh, feel your feelings deeply. That's a long period of time. So how did you move from victim to empowered?
Gosh, through a lot of therapy, a lot of work on myself, a lot of noticing what my thoughts were about, having to stop those really, really, really harsh, critical thoughts, and feeling, this beautiful counselor that we walked a long journey together. We became really good friends, but, again, there's a big but, because I had a big part of my victimhood was rescuing others. How can I rescue others?
Right.
And I always get confused. Lent to, borrowed from. Lent to. We borrowed her. I still get it confused. We lent her a huge amount of money in rands, and she promised to, this counselor of mine, we became a really good friend, and she promised to pay back the money. And I always knew in my gut she wasn't going to. And I had to find this level of forgiveness. So it was a long journey of forgive, because then we immigrated to New Zealand, and my husband, my second husband, and I really needed the money. And he was so angry at me, so angry at her, because we needed the money, and I was asking her for the money, and I knew intuitively, I knew it was never going to come back to us.
Right.
But having to forgive somebody that you trusted, that I trusted so much, so it just took me into my victimhood again and blaming her, and then I just realized, like, what's the point? Because I was the one holding onto the resentment continuously.
Right. And
So
that harms us more when we hold our resentment.
absolutely, absolutely, and I don't think that it was, for me, it wasn't a quick fix. I wish I could just say to you, it was like spirit just went magic wand, boom. I was angry at spirit. I was angry at life. I was angry. I was like, just when is this just going to change? And then with so many different moments, because there were just moments where I went, wow, I've shifted. Wow. And just looking in the mirror and having to work with a little girl and find the forgiveness. I didn't know that I had to forgive my 5-year-old self.
Yeah.
But it was 5, it was 6, it was 7, because, in my journey of being sexually abused, I wanted to share that good feeling. And I realized that there was so much shame in wanting to, come to my house, let's play doctor, doctor. And it was a feeling of, there was something that had happened. And this is what I realized by having children, that when we are 4, 5, 6, 7, we want to start, I don't want to sound, I don't even know what the word is, but disgraceful is the word that's coming to me, because it's a level of disgust that I had to work through. But the disgrace was when my mom had friends come over with children, like, let's go play doctor, doctor, let's go play doctor. And what I realized is that children play with them, their organs, their sexual organs, and it's not good or bad, but I was made to feel bad about it, disgraced about it. Because when I was caught, it was like, what are you doing? And that's where I talk about that, that not knowing that there's so many levels to what I'm trying to share right now. So I know I probably am not, I can hear myself not making sense, but I had to work through the shame, my root chakra of the shame. Being sexually abused, I know, with working with a lot of, and this is where the universe again had blessed me when I started counseling. I studied neuro-linguistic programming, counseling skills, working with hospice patients. The universe gifted me with sexually abused clients. And I knew that with me being activated, with me wanting to just rescue them, wanting to fix them, it was my work that I was doing on myself, that I still needed to forgive myself. I had to forgive my uncle, which took many, many years to find the forgiveness, because he was in our family. And I only told my parents at 33, and they didn't reply or respond in the way that I'd hoped them to. My dad just became defensive, and because my dad saw him as a friend.
Right.
My dad couldn't comprehend. So I know it's not a one sentence answer, and I'm sorry that I can't answer it and just say, well, this is who I became. My journey was hard. It was hard. It was just getting out of my head and dropping into my heart, and allowing my body to process in the way that it needed to process.
So did you find that as you were, because you were processing the emotions, that a lot of it was clearing, which I know for me, in processing my emotions and my and facing traumas, and the small child that thinks it's their fault, that in facing those emotions and feeling them, it clears, it like not creates an empty space, but an open space maybe for more spiritual connection, more aligned. I always use frequency, and that word makes sense to me, but more aligned frequency in order to become not so much, in order to use the empathic abilities we naturally have in a way where we can be of service to others, by hearing or seeing or feeling intuitively, guidance that other people don't necessarily get or feel.
Yes, 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 yes. And yes to all the above. And what I've learned is that my journey has been to find the bridge between my human self and my expression of my human self and working with spirit. So over time, as I was doing different courses, yoga teacher training, the counseling skills, working with every individual that was coming into my path, realizing that they are a part of me, they are mirroring a part of me back. So for many, many years, I was just seeing clients who were angry, angry, angry. But I also have come to realize over time that we don't have to go back into the story. I know the story of my sexual abuse. My journey was a tough one in the sense of, one of my therapists had got me to put my fingers down my throat to get that old energy out. Whereas now we can only just work through breath,
Right.
just bring the breath and breathe out the anger, breathe out the fear, breathe out the rage. Sometimes it does show up in where I've had clients myself where you want to gag, that old energies. So yes, the clearing shows up in different ways. I've worked with plant medicine, psilocybin. I've worked with ayahuasca. That's been a big part of my activation in coming to New Zealand. And I did not realize how much my nervous system, my head was the big navigator. Just clear the thoughts, come back to you. Clear the thoughts, come back to you. And coming back to me was coming back into my heart, coming back into my space of grace. And I didn't know how to do that for such a long time. So in my journey, I feel like I was in a washing machine, recycle, repeat. And then and part of my anger was just like, really? I'm here again? And then part of my journey, and this is a true story, my victimhood cleared a wedding table. It was so funny because I just wanted to tell my story. I wanted somebody to hear me. I wanted to be that young girl that, like, would somebody just listen? It was a cry out for help.
Yes.
And I realize even in talking about my story now and on, talking to you, being on different podcasts, that I'm talking from a space of da 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 da. And I know I can talk quickly and I can hear myself saying, okay, Michelle, slow down. Because in my disassociation, in my trauma space, I would disassociate. And I still have had moments where I've had to learn to come back into myself, because we know nature doesn't, you plant a seed, it doesn't grow overnight, Susan.
No, it doesn't.
And that's part of learning the empathy for ourselves when we have come from traumatic backgrounds. But my rescuing has been my default. How can I fix? How can I help? How can I make this happen for somebody else?
Yeah.
And as I've let go in the clearing, I've connected and connected and connected. And I've realized that it's probably always been there, but I wasn't able to hear it because there was just too much chaos going on in my world.
Yes.
And
I totally get that. I can relate to that completely. And that's why, that's part of what soul growing, we're all here as divine sparks, as individualized pieces of spirit. And we're here because we chose to grow and evolve. And so, and it's not just, okay, I'm going to grow up and be an adult. It's what you just described, growing into your inner awareness, your inner world, and releasing all the trauma and garbage and blocks to really being in touch with that soul piece, that spirit piece, that divine spark that holds the wisdom and then is the guidance system. And that's part of what soul growth is the soul is here to learn. We come in and our soul, this physical body holds a soul.
yes.
And we come in to grow. And the fact that we're all on planet Earth right now with everything that's happening around the planet, and all of us are inner and interconnected because we are spiritual beings. This is such a potent time to be here on planet Earth and to develop our spiritual gifts, our woo-woo side, if you will, so that we can be of more service to ourselves first. And therefore, as we serve ourselves in terms of healing our traumas, in terms of realigning our body with a vibration of spirit, in terms of listening to guidance systems that are not explainable to other people, all of that is part of why we chose to be here, so that we can serve humanity as we collectively are evolving into the new way of living life. People call it New Earth, but or ascension or whatever. But that's why we're all here. So, Michelle, explain, how did you know you were a channeler? Like, did they just come down and tap you on the shoulder and say, you got to listen to us? And we're telling you truth here, lady.
Well, one of my big learnings is that they've always been around, but I did not know, because I've always put others on pedestal. So my beautiful friend that I was talking about earlier on, that was my counselor, she became my mentor. She became almost my everything, and that was also not a healthy place to be. I always put on a pedestal. And my husband my second husband's always been my navigator, where he's like, you're so gifted. And I'm like, huh? He goes, I watch you. And I'm like, huh? I don't understand what you mean. He says, you just care. You care. Now, I see what comes out of your mouth. And he comes from a tourism background, so he's worked with thousands of individuals. And he's also really good with tuning in, even though he doesn't think or like to believe that he is. But he's actually just always said to me, you have a gift, you have a talent. And I'm like, I don't know what you mean. So that was part of my level of not knowing, but always knowing. So coming to New Zealand, it kind of just activated me. I first came to New Zealand, immigrated, fell to pieces, went into a deep depression. And this was after doing many, many years of work on myself, working with others. My very first connection, though, was in South Africa, where I was counseling a lady. And all of a sudden, I just saw her holding a little baby. And I started to describe the baby. And she said, how do you know this? And I said, I could see her in your arms. And she had a beautiful white dress on, beautiful blue, dark hair. And she started to cry and really just chunk. And she said, how do you know this? And I said, I don't know. I'm just seeing her in your arms right now. And she said, Michelle, I had a stillborn, and that's exactly the way she was dressed. That's exactly the way she had looked. And that was what was so miraculous, is that, again, I believed everybody else had the gift. Everybody else was psychic. Everybody else was clairvoyant. And I couldn't understand, even going into a yoga class, why I would be the one activated, why I would be the one that was just saying things. And people go, how do you know this? And I said, I don't know. Right, but I didn't realize that I was more, that I was the soul. Right. That is just, we're all souls that are so vast. And landing in New Zealand, I came here and I thought, falling to pieces, and I thought, okay, I've got to get up. Went into a big depression, but every morning would get up. And depression is different for every single person, I got up, washed my hair, brushed my teeth, made sure my kids were looked after, made sure I was cooking, made sure I was cleaning the house. And I realized my beautiful word is hindsight. In hindsight, when I look back, I'm like, oh, okay, right. That's when they were talking to me, So when I was learning, I would hear these different voices. And I started up my therapy work again and started counseling, started tuning into what I was being shown. And then I started doing a lot of in-person sessions, and my hands started to move. And then I got start working with music, and okay. And Michelle, you're a singer, you can sing. And I thought I was a singer in the shower, but I couldn't hit notes. So I started working with music, and I started doing these eights. And the one day in meditation, I sat and I could feel my vibration shifting. I could feel my body getting cold. And again, this has been my learning. It's kind of like I learned arse about face, and I used to get frustrated about that. I'm like, why don't you just click your fingers, guys, and go, bing, you're anointed, and you get it like everybody else. No, not meant to be. And that's part of my learning, and that's okay. Yeah. And like people would say to me, your hands are always cold. healers are told, you've got to have warm hands. So I did Reiki, and why wouldn't my hands just warm up? It's like, damn it. Well, this was just part of my learning. And I learned that everybody is activated and in tune in their own ways. And that's part of what I teach. We all are unique. You said it. We're sparks of light. We're all unique and we all learn in our own ways. But my learning has been, you got to be this way. You got to be this way. So I didn't conform. I didn't fit. And it made me feel worse.
Yes, I totally get that.
Yes.
Trying to conform is
Oh my God.
Be-
hard work.
For me, as I got into, after my divorce, and I got into podcasting and wanting to have clients, I did a whole, almost a year long, how do you do that? An entrepreneur, here's how you market, here's how you sell. And it didn't work for me because I was fitting into somebody's paradigm. I was trying to make myself fit into that.
I love that.
And it doesn't work. So, and that's because we're all unique and all different. So I'm so glad that you finally kind of moved out of the this way and into the this way, more expansive, because that's also for everybody that's listening. That's how we grow is opening it and becoming expansive instead of small and trying to fit yourself into a cog, like a cog in a wheel thing, or a round thing and a square thing, just being more expansive because we are expansive beings. So I'm just loving that you did that for yourself, Michelle.
Oh gosh, it was incredible. And the guidance has been there and showed up, but I realized my fears were holding me back.
Yes.
New Zealand is so we first landed in Queenstown with these massive that was part of my not knowing that these massive big mountains in Queenstown were holding such vibration, and I believe that the mountains either spit you out or you stay, you do the work. And I was just like, and it was very masculine dominant because it's an adrenaline, skiing, mountain biking, and again, just part of my learning. And then Spirit introduced me to a beautiful friend. She's now a beautiful friend. And at the time, she was talking about the Galactic Federation Love Light. And I was like, I don't know what the hell you're talking about. Who are they?
Okay. Are you kind of like are you just a Star Trek, fan and you just want to talk about galactic stuff? Yeah, I get it.
And she was sharing these experiences with me, and I'm like, I have no idea, But the beauty of the Spirit introducing us was that it was about her learning to work with her body and me learning to work with more that's more out there. So it's always divinely interconnected. As you said, we're all interconnected, and it's like a basket or a weaving, and then we add something else, or we add something else into the basket. So yes, the Council of Eight started to, I say, well, who are you? I could feel you different, and I could feel my vibration, which I didn't realize. Again, because I was going up different levels, I didn't know how to nourish my nervous system because I would literally just like quiver. And that's what they felt like. And I started tuning into this different frequency. And then I would ask, well, who are you? We're the council. Well, who the heck is the council? The Council of Eight. And my hands literally were doing eights in my therapy work, and they were starting to get my voice to start to shift and open, like so clever. There were a lot of times that I put my own perception into things, and I'd sort of come out and in, or up and down, and I could feel when I come into my body when I'd be Michelle, and they kept saying, just trust, just trust, just trust. And I didn't want to trust because I was fearful. I was scared of what happens if I get the information wrong. And then I started to negotiate with them and say, can we keep it simple? I'm a simple human being.
That's good.
I again am not able to articulate words correctly. There's things that I say that isn't in the human language, I believe, because I've had many people correct me. And I laugh at it. I'm like, okay, in my head it makes sense, but it's in the message. It's how they share things. And the beauty of them opening up my throat was different frequencies that would come through, different vibrations that would come through. So that was part of the learning to work with music and starting to sing. But I would hit these highs and then I would crash. And then I would be down and out for like 2 to 3 days. And then I would purge. I would just cry and cry and cry and cry. And I've come to learn that we just allow, just allow without holding myself back. And that was what I was doing. I'm feeling heavy. I can't do this work. And people would tell me that too. So it's all just a learning in life, and it's not good or bad. But my biggest learning is just to let go what people have told me, how I'm meant to be, how I'm meant to show up. I'm a Cancerian. I'm water, and it just is what it is, And it's every single part of my learning, and I've said this time and time again, and you've said this earlier on, that there has been so much fear from 2020. There has been so much, the Council of Eight have showed me it's like a tsunami that's coming, and it's hitting us, and we're now in it. And my words for this year of 2025 is rock and roll. And how do we rock and roll? How do we ride those waves of navigating a new compass, a new way of being, the new earth,
Yes.
And
it's not a one-off either. It's not here's the rock and now we're going to roll and, oh, good, you got out of it. No, it's going to be, it's going to be ongoing. And I'm not saying this to scare anybody.
Sure.
I was scared last year when I went, oh my God, that's 2025, when I was feeling it and seeing it. I'm like, please, can we be done? But surrendering and letting go and allowing it to unfold, you guys, allowing 2025 to unfold. And we're only, as we're recording this, we're only 2 weeks in, but we're already seeing around the globe that it is rock and roll. It is. And it's not batten down the hatches, it's not get ready and hide out. It is really allowing yourself to get in that canoe of life and go with the flow and go with the tsunami. Because, and I'm really holding this, Michelle, I really believe toward the end of this year, we are going to be in a much better place, a much, much, much better place that we can't see right now because the waves are so high and the rocks are so big, and and we just can't see it. And that humans have got to learn that it's okay. That's part of surrendering, right? Is that it's okay for us to be who we are.
I love
Michelle,
that.
thank you so much for sharing your journey with us today. I so appreciate it. You guys, Michelle Carpenter also has a podcast called Keeping It Real. So we'll have all that in our show notes. I can't wait to speak with you again. We should probably do this in a few months so that we can double check ourselves of where we were and who we are then, I would love it.
Yes.
But until the meantime, first of all, Michelle, I want to say thank you for finding your voice, for allowing yourself to be that vessel of healing and insight and just grace. I really thank you so much for doing that and be willing to continue your learning journey. Just thank you. And I'm just going to end with, and so it is. Namaste. Well, that wraps up our empowering chat for the day. I hope you enjoyed it and found it inspired you to be more empowered. If you want to find out more about me, go to susanburrell.com, my website, and you can see what we're up to. I am teaching classes again, so there's a calendar of that. And you can register. You can check out my book, Live an Empowered Life, a 30-day journey with the companion inspiration cards. Or you can access my guided meditations that go through Insight Timer. We got a bunch of stuff on the website. Check it out. And until then, namaste.